Porridge Radio, Waterslide, Diving Board, Ladder to the Sky, album review. Let's chat about it. Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this latest from Porridge Radio. These guys and gals are straight out of Brighton. They've been at it for a few years now. While they've been dabbling in indie rock, a little post-punk, maybe even a little sadcore as well in their early days. And in those early days, they were pushing out a lot of releases on their own. But honestly, a lot of those early projects, I just was not really that into. Just not really my cup of tea. It wasn't gripping me. For me, I got on board around their Rice, Pasta, and Other Fillers album. This was a much more eclectic, a lot more frantic, and most importantly, consistent album. And not for nothing, their last album, Every Bad, I wish I reviewed this thing. It is so far from where they started off, but it is a classy, well-written indie rock album. It is filled with awesome performances, a lot of tense energy, and it's just really approachable too. And the singles leading up to this album, little hit and miss, a little bit, but overall I thought they were pretty good. And honestly, from most of this album, I gotta tell you, they still have a pretty solid sound. I really do like Back to the Radio as a start to this album. It is very tense. It is very pensive. It's very paranoid as well. It just sounds uncomfortable. I really love the very spacey, cosmic synths as well. They're just very bouncy and very light. They almost remind me of something from Granddaddy's discography. But that's kind of a running theme throughout this whole album. A lot of the synth work on this album is actually some of my favorite parts to this album. In its own way, this track is really explosive as well. It's a very quiet kind of explosive, but still explosive nonetheless. It's also really sweet, it's really melodic, it's got a big sing-along hook. Yeah, Porridge Radio have a sound, and it's pretty darn good. Trying, on the other hand, is a completely different animal. This is a much breezier, sort of feel-good track. It's still very frantic at the end of the day, but the very colorful instrumental that we get here is a really nice touch. It really gives you the feeling that at any moment, guess what, you can hear anything. It's a very animated sound for Porridge Radio. It's simple, but it works really well. The synths are classy, the guitar solo is sharp. This is really good. And I have loved Birthday Party since I first heard it. Between the off-kilter pacing, the very spacey synths, the repeated intense chorus that we get here. It's great. I mean, it's clearly taken from a very different time in indie rock and post-punk. But it's done really classy. It comes off as a sort of weirdo indie anthem. And the manic vocals on this track are just icing on the cake. We also have You Could Be Happy If You Want To for the sort of weirder, trippier, almost psychedelic side of the band. This is a trip. This is a quiet, cosmic, meditative jam, which that, alongside these brutally surreal lyrics, make for a pretty far-out experience. I mean, honestly, it's very hard to keep track of at times because of the numerous layers to this track, but it's really exciting. It makes me think that, a lot of tracks like this have a lot of replay value. But then we get End of Last Year, and this is the real first flop that I've heard here. The thing is, the sort of softer side to Porridge Radio, it's not all bad, it's just incredibly flimsy. For a weirder, quieter, more psychedelic track, it's not necessarily the worst track here, but it's easily not as well written and fun as some of the other tunes in this vein. Rotten, on the other hand, this is so boring. The lack of energy on this track is such a letdown. And there are a handful of tracks here, let me tell you, that do this sound a lot more justice. But this isn't it. This just kind of starts bland and spirals into nothing. Flowers is also so boring. So boring. Like I said, it's not like they can't do a slower, more meditative track. Trust me, there's some really great ones late album. But then we get this track, and it's not exactly helping the argument. Yes, some of the quaint backing vocals and the instrumental, there are moments with it that are really sweet, really likable. But the overall low energy of this track is just not for me. After this track was over, I needed a coffee and a Red Bull at once. And Waterslide, Diving Board, Ladder to the Sky as a finale is not my cup of tea either. I mean, it's certainly sweet, tender, passionate. The heart's in the right place on this track. But it's also really one note. The low energy of this track, once again, just really whizzes just right by me. Just does not stop me in my tracks at all. They just really need to be careful with some of these lighter tunes because it can get faceless so quick. That's not to say that the band doesn't have a lot of tricks up their sleeve. Take, for example, Jealousy. For a slower, weirder tune from Porridge Radio, this is the ticket. It is so tragic. It is so heartbreaking. It is easily one of the most emotional tunes here. It is commendable. You feel this, man. And it's also got a ton of progression. By the end of this track, it transforms into this lavish, gloomy sing-along ballad. It is so, so, so good. I really love I Hope She's Okay Too as well. Like, the weird, campy synths on this album, they should not work as well as they do, but they work really well. Outside of that, Porridge Radio here does a great job of building tension, even bringing in some suspense and drama. It's a great track and another really solid example of, how well a lighter tune from this band can work. And it's just as emotionally potent as so many other tracks here. I have a lot of the same thoughts on Splintered. Trust me, they do this sound really well when they do it right. And once again, the very surreal, visually intense lyrics are icing on the cake. And while a little spacey and, a little weird at times, it's just as angsty and pissed off, which I love. And The Rip, as a late album treat, might be the best track here. I love the pacing here. The tension, once again, they really have that down to a T. Outside of that, the synths are great once again. We get a great guitar solo as well. And honestly, as far as a chorus goes, this is probably the most memorable one here. Yeah, Porridge Radio have a ton going for them, and they're easily one of the more interesting bands in indie rock and post-punk right now. I mean, it's still nothing wildly flashy or genre-busting or, really ahead of the curve, but they do their sound so well. It's a great exercise in pacing, tension, drama, eclectic performances, and surreal lyrics. My only issue is, when it comes to their softer and spacier tunes, it's not like they can't do the sound justice. It leads to some of the best tracks here, but it's also a very slippery slope. They just need to be careful. Personally, I don't think this is as consistent as their last album, but it's still a very viable, entertaining listen. I'm feeling a strong 7 on this album. But let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.